not much of a crowd tonight. If you noticed, the arena looked way less than half full. Now, generally, San Francisco isn't that big of a modern wrestling town. It was back in the day. San Francisco was a hot territory back in the Cow Palace days and, Pat Patterson and shit like that. But nowadays, that audience plus that part of the country is probably a little bit more COVID conscious than deer shit, Alabama and other places like that. So it's probably a little bit less gathering. Plus, you got baseball on, you've got football on. As a matter of fact, I think the Giants and San Francisco Giants are playing in the playoffs. So there's a lot of distractions up there. There are excuses to why the building isn't that full, but WWE has been dealing with these type of attendance issues for years, way before COVID and way before AEW even came along. How many years have we been talking and going to shows and seeing shows with the entire upper deck tarped off, but yet WWE continuously has been running the major arenas where the professional basketball and professional hockey teams play in all the big cities and all the big markets. And as we've talked about recently here on the show, we've talked about arena sizes when it comes to AEW. And what I like about them is they book smaller venues, 5,000, 10,000, 12,000 seat arenas, to where the building looks mostly full. It looks sold out, and it looks better on television. And the vibe is better. The energy is better. The atmosphere is better in these smaller, more intimate shows. You guys have probably been to shows like this where you would agree. And here in WWE, you would think if they would just book smaller arenas, that the show would look much better. It would look like it was sold out, because it probably is if you only are running an 8,000 seat arena. But, your set takes up so much space and all of that. But, if you could just book some sort of a convention center or a theater or something like that and just put 8,000 people in there, it would look great for TV. But WWE still runs the major arenas, and they only utilize half or less of it. And we've been seeing that for years. So I am assuming that WWE, because since they've been running the big arenas again, probably like starting in like 96 and a little bit more consistently from there on into 97. And then of course, 98 and 99 and beyond, that's all they've been running. But prior to that, in the mid 90s, they were doing a lot of smaller arenas and only saving the big arenas for pay-per-views. So over the last like 25 years now, WWE has developed relationships with every major arena in the country, and they hold shows in those arenas multiple times per year. So I'm sure they have contracts and they have deals and relationships that they've built with these venues over time that benefits them. Because if for any reason the rent was astronomical, or if it was very, very expensive to rent these buildings, WWE would have been out of there years ago. We've seen that kind of with Madison Square Garden. They don't run a ton of shows there. Part of the reason is logistically, but also because it's expensive. So if for any reason these buildings were crazy expensive, then WWE, I think, would stop. But I think the deals that they have are beneficial. They're probably affordable, and it likely makes things a lot easier for scheduling. If you know all the buildings you're going to run for the most part in a year, it probably makes it really easy to book out your pay-per-views and your Raws in terms of knowing which venues are available and whatnot. But I think if they started running smaller venues, it would look much better on TV. But that means finding these venues, maintaining and creating relationships with these venues and all that stuff. And there's probably so much more complexities that go into this that I have no idea about. I would love a Fightful Select article on this, or anything that can detail or outline exactly what deals with venues entail and what's going on. And, are they locked up into these deals? Do they have to run a certain amount of shows and that's why they keep going back? What's the deal? I don't know. But I think based on WWE's attendance and based on the overall decline of pro wrestling, in an overall sense, we're not getting the ratings we used to get in the Attitude Era, far from it. And the attendance has kind of taken a dip too. Back in the day, I used to go to pay-per-views during the Attitude Era. They were legitimately sold out. So were Raws, so were SmackDowns. It's been a long time since we've seen those days. So I think if business is down and attendance is down, then you should run smaller buildings. Don't go back to the way WWE Raw was in 1994, where you had 55 fucking people in the audience sometimes, but just take one notch lower than where you are. That's all. Run college basketball stadiums instead of NBA basketball stadiums. Run smaller venues. I think it would look great on TV, but like I said, it's probably easier when you revisit these arenas multiple times a year. It's probably very easy for production. They just kind of have to do what they did last time they were there. Everybody knows it. The familiarity with it, and the talent too, in terms of driving and getting to the arena. Everybody knows where it is because they've been to these cities multiple times. You start changing things up, maybe it'll make it harder, but tough shit, it'll look a lot better on TV, and I think they should at least consider it. But there's got to be some contractual stuff with these venues that's preventing them from going smaller, because they certainly wouldn't just be eating, all of this money, and the expenses to run these big buildings just for the sake of running them. That is not the way WWE does things right now, especially the way they seem to be so bottom line driven. Doesn't seem like them just wasting money is something they do. If it wasn't profitable or beneficial anymore, they're going to change it. So that means it must be either profitable or beneficial or affordable for them to continue to run these venues. Otherwise, I don't see the fucking point of running a show that's so fucking empty.